For those who don't know me, I'm Misja Heuveling. I am Chief Solution Architect at Software AG, responsible for integration, API management, and IoT, so a broad set of products within Software AG. Basically, the technical side of our product portfolio. We also have business transformation kind of products. Those are led by a colleague of mine. Well, I have about 20 years of experience in integration, so you can see that on my face, already getting gray hairs, of which about 10 years now at Software AG in various roles where I have been part of the professional services team and now part of the pre-sales team. So helping customers get more out of their jewels that they already have in their company by connecting them and exposing them to the outside world and thereby delighting their customers. That's a little bit about me. And I also have a number for you. I'm not sure what you think this number 123 might mean, but it's actually the average amount of SaaS applications a company has of the size of 200 to 500 employees. I thought this was quite a big number. I'm not sure if you also think about that, but if you come to think of it, it's not only, of course, your Salesforce.com, but nowadays each department very easily picks up the credit card, connects a SaaS application, and thereby you see the amount of SaaS applications growing. Thereby, you typically see that there will be a need for integrating all of these because data lives in it, and typically in a company, it's not a silo. So therefore, you see the integration challenge of today coming up. And what you see is that, well, first of all, 123 SaaS applications, that's just the SaaS application. So you also still have your on-premise applications which still exist, which means that the amount of data sources that you have keeps growing and growing day in, day out. So that will be a challenge for you, getting the productivity, connecting all those applications and doing that. Another challenge that we see today is knowledge workers. Getting the right skills in your company of people that can do the job that you require them to do. I'm not sure about your companies, but I guess it's the same as in our company. If you look at the website, there's enough open vacancies for people that you need to do the job. So that is also limiting you in what you can do on a day-to-day basis. And of course, customer experience or expectation is always more demanding. The average customer only drops off after one bad experience with a company. And that's roughly 20% of all the customers that do that after one bad experience. If you have two bad experiences, the number increases even more. So that's why, as a company, you also need to focus on customer experience, making sure that if someone connects to one SaaS application and doesn't get called back because information is in another application, you might already have an issue. So then the question is, what if? What if you could connect everything very easily? What if you enable your business and your IT people to integrate everything for you? And what if you can win new business and delight your customers at the same time? Wouldn't that be great? Well, if you could do that, then you could deliver better customer service, expand the capability of your IT team because you're freeing up resources by also giving business people the integration capabilities in their hand, and quickly deliver new services which are customer focused, connecting all data from your entire company. And now I'll be going into these 3 steps and actually tell you a little bit about what does that actually mean, connecting everything easily. Well, I already spoke about this, but there's so many data sources nowadays, applications on premise, things connecting. So maybe you have a lorry delivering your goods to your customer. You stick on a GPS tracker and you know where it is. You can already monitor the temperature inside your lorry to see if all conditions are good, if you have fresh goods, for instance. Connecting that with data from your ERP, your CRM, etc., will allow you to bring that better customer experience. And that, of course, means that all of those have APIs, and you need to bring those APIs together. And that's where APIs connect everything together to actually help you build those experiences, integrate your logistics with your front office systems, etc., etc. So to do that, we have a cloud and an on-premise, actually a hybrid offering called webMethods.io integration with SaaS connectors and on-premise connectors, a whole range for all the applications that you typically need. This is only a short list of the connectivity that we have today. There's many more than 300 connectors today. But what if the SaaS application is not there that you're using? It's the newest thing on the block that you want to connect. In that case, we also have a connectivity builder where you can build your own connector in such a way that you can connect that SaaS application that's not there today. And then, if you have these connectors both on premise and in the cloud, you need to bring them together. And that's where the hybrid integration comes into play. And hybrid connectivity is important because you need to bring, well, your valued applications that you have on premise together with those in the cloud. Does that mean you need to have web methods everywhere? No, it doesn't. You can start very easily with webMethods.io integration in the cloud, connecting your SaaS to SaaS integrations to each other. And then by using a webMethods hybrid agent, installing that on premise, you can connect that hybrid agent to the cloud, allowing your on-premise applications to talk to the applications in the cloud. If you already have an ESB, you can connect the hybrid agent to this ESB. If you don't have an ESB or integration suite yet, then we can also expand this hybrid agent into the full webMethods on-premise integration stack so that we can connect to your enterprise applications and talk to them. And thereby, opening up all the applications to the outside world. Important to mention is also, looking at the arrows, the on-premise integration agent is connecting from on-premise to the cloud. So the hybrid connectivity is also a secure connectivity. It makes use of secure channels to connect to the integration cloud, but also it connects from inside to the outside, not the other way around. So you don't have to open any firewalls from the outside, allowing, well, wrong, malicious, wanting individuals or corporations to try to find this hole in your firewall and get through. So that's also an important thing that you need to have, of course, is secure connectivity, because it's open to the internet. That's a little bit about the connectivity. And now you also want to enable business and IT. That means that there are different personas, in the company that are working with integration. Typically, in many companies, we have the integration specialist. It's the girl in purple in this case in the slide. The integration specialist, like many of us, have worked in integration for many years. They know what it takes to build an integration. They know about all the difficult things about data transformation, talking about, well, but this date format is different than that date format. So they know how to build robust, reusable integrations. Then going one step further is the developer persona. This persona is someone who has lots of experience in, building applications, but maybe less so in integrating applications. But then again, this developer persona, he does know what it takes to build robust applications. He knows that you have to handle faults in a certain way, log faults, handle exceptions, and give meaningful errors back. So this still is a skilled worker, but he or she doesn't have the tools on their daily laptop to work with the integration suite. But it would be great if you could give them the tools without having to install a whole big integration set that's taking up all your resources. So that's the second persona. And then you have the line of business. I wouldn't say it's the general line of business person in any company. This is typically a person that has some is a little bit IT savvy, so to say. So he knows a little bit about computers, he knows a bit about applications, but it's not his day-to-day work. So you can't expect this person to know all the ins and outs of integration and what it takes for integration. On top of, you see the integration skills. On the left side, that persona has most of the integration skills, line of business, the least, of course. But on the bottom, you also see the integration needs. Typically, the line of business person has less needs of integration than the integration specialist. And what you see in that case is that the line of business person just creates ad hoc integrations. He has a problem which he wants to be solved right now. So he needs a tool to quickly realize this. Whereas the integration specialist on the other end, he works day in, day out with integrations to actually create, a catalog of APIs that others can use, like for instance, this line of business user, to, use those integrations to quickly hook up all those applications together. And the developer is a little bit in the middle, so he doesn't do it on his day-to-day job, but maybe at some point he's in an agile team where he needs to do some integration tasks as well, next to his application building skills. So there, he's a little bit in between. Mapping that onto where these personas typically work on. The integration specialist typically works on the tier 1 applications, the ERPs, the CRMs, so the big, expensive applications that are the running heart of your company. Then the developer persona typically works on complementary projects. So on a project basis, works on standard integrations, but more on a project basis. So yeah, maybe some integrations that are needed for certain programs that are running. Whereas, well, at the end, the business user, he has a problem, and there can be, I want to replace this Excel with something else. Can also be, I'm launching a new marketing campaign. I quickly need to get all my customers from the CRM, which have this certain category attached to them, and then send out a mailing to all of those about my new marketing campaign. So he's more on an ad hoc basis, needing it maybe to create new experiences, to create his ad hoc marketing or departmental solution. All of those also typically work in a different pace. And I'm not sure if you're aware of the Gartner bimodal IT model. In that case, Gartner describes it as mode 1 and mode 2, where mode 1 is the systematic approach. It's what we did yesterday, basically. It's a high level of governance, so there's a change board involved. There's everything to be sure that all the changes that you do to a system are stable and robust. So keep the lights running, because it's the core of your application, of course. So there you want the governance. On the other end, the line of business user, he wants something done right now. So he's not going through a whole governance board with approvals, etc. So he needs a different way of working. And how do you actually bring that together? Well, that's where Jeroen will also help a little bit in helping. How can we help you getting those speeds and modes together? They typically have a different way of working. But one of the things I typically always say is that the integrator, the specialist, he creates a catalog of robust APIs. The developer creates a layer 2 of APIs, which are typically also robust, but more fit for purpose for a certain purpose. And the line of business user, he creates, in the end, APIs which sometimes are disposable. That's why the big chunk of the triangle on the top, sometimes reusable, but much more in the agile way. And some of them trickle down to the system of record, but most of them are in the innovation layer, the system of innovation. Mode 1 doesn't necessarily mean you have to work in a waterfall kind of way. You can do agile, but still in a governed way. But yeah, the speeds are typically different. So therefore, we typically also have a different experience for those users to work with the integration tooling. And what we see here is the integration experience for the business user. It's an intuitive way of creating integrations based on application connectors, which we have here in the sidebar, dragging them onto the canvas and connecting one application to the other. Should be very easy to do, very intuitive. So any, well, IT savvy business users should be able to use that. It also has a graphical mapping tool, sort of like this, but here we already have the, well, second user interface. It's in the same cloud product, but now for the developer type of persona. It's actually what we have for our integration specialists, who typically have their rich IDE based on their laptop. This is the web-based variant of it, where you do have the capabilities of creating more programmatical integrations, where you can do for loops, if this, then that, try catch, all the constructs that a typical programmer would use to create an integration in this case. So it is more advanced. It's, well, therefore not for the faint-hearted like the business IT user, but anyone with the right skills in programming, in IT, will be able to use this to quickly build their robust applications. So the mapping, like I mentioned, it's all graphical, so it's all drag and drop. But we can also see, for instance, we can hard code some values. But here we, file name, for instance, we can see that we drag an element onto it and we type a little bit part behind it so that we can very easily concatenate a value from, well, the inputs with some hard-coded text in this case. And very strong to actually combine both input and expressions to build your mappings. And then to delight your customers, the third subject, you actually need integration-led, API-led integration. This probably is not a new snake that you've seen. At least I try to show it as many times as I can. This is our vision of how API-led integration works. You typically begin with defining your customer journeys. So together with your end user, you will be sitting down and looking at, but where do we have touch points with our customers? Where do they call us? Where do they email us? Where do they start shouting at us? Where do they compliment us? And based on that, you start identifying the resources. And here Jeroen had a little bit other idea of identifying resources, but can work both. The idea here is actually identifying the APIs in our perspective. Jeroen's vision is also a great one. So, but in this case, after you've identified, based on your customer touch points, which APIs you need, you can start designing them. You can design them in our API gateway, in our API portal, in our integration cloud product. No matter where you design them, can also be in an external tool. Once you have the API, you have a contract which you can use. Based on that, you can import it in our API gateway, enable mocking, and based on the definition that you've created, based on the schemas of the messages, based on the samples that you've provided, it will automatically generate mocks for you. And then you can enhance those and expand them to put some logic behind those mocks. So if a person enters a value A, you want to return mock A. If someone enters B, you return response B, etc. Once you have the mocking enabled, you can publish the APIs, and those APIs will then already be able to be consumed by end users. And this is where actually a sort of parallel path will start. So you can start building the integrations behind the API, whereas the consumer of the API can start building their application or using those APIs. Then actually this talk is about developing the APIs, so not about managing them, developing them using a low-code integration platform in the cloud. Once you've created those APIs, you can automate the building of it, the publishing, and applying the policies, and finally start measuring your APIs. So API-led, well, we can start defining the APIs in our webMethods.io integration suite. You can define them there, attach integrations to them, or import an existing API definition and also attach your integrations to them, or start developing the integrations for all the methods and resources in your API. When we talk about REST, if it's so, your operations, of course. And well, once we have imported the API, we can start to very quickly enable our integrations. For instance, for the business user, we can create a webhook starting your flow. That's the first icon that we see on the canvas. That will be where to start. There can be a webhook upon which we hook the API invocation, so that as soon as we call a certain method, it actually uses this webhook to execute the logic that we have. All the parameters passed can then be used in our integration to start our mapping, start developing our API. And once we've created the APIs, well, we see here the dotted lines. That's actually the cloud, our cloud, basically, where we expose the APIs and then put our API gateway on top of it to manage the APIs, protect them using the policies, log invocations, do the metrics, do the SLA management, etc. And of course, be able to publish them to the API portal so that people can find the APIs. And then, of course, like we talked about before, it's the hybrid solution. So if we have on-premise applications, they can connect through the Web Methods integration server on-premise. Once you log on to our cloud environment, it's actually a whole ecosystem of capabilities that you have. Once you log on, you can see all the capabilities that we have. So that includes the API gateway, the API portal, the integration suite, but also B2B and our IoT tooling. Very easy to also request trials or any of those in your environment. So if you want to get some feeling, what does this other product do? Can we use it? Easy to link between them, but also very easy to switch between them. In the top right corner, we have 6 squares. That's what we call our application switcher, which you can very easily use to switch between the API gateway, integration, etc. And thereby also being able to use the APIs from your API gateway in the integration suite. How we typically call this is loosely coupled, tightly integrated. They're all standalone products, but tightly integrated in each other so that as soon as you spin up one of the instances and connect them, well, you don't have to connect them. They're already pre-connected, pre-configured. So the API gateway and integration suite already talk to each other. Since it's one cloud, it's also centrally managed in terms of user management, those kind of capabilities. So you only once configure your Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, or your other authentication mechanism. Maybe you have something like an OAuth provider. Configure it once, it works for all the products in the cloud. And of course, we can all try it for free. If we go to webmethods.io/integration, you'll get to the landing page of webmethods.io in the cloud. softwareag.cloud is the other URL, which will bring you to our Software AG cloud environment. There you can start the free trial, start working with it, discovering how easy it is to use, etc. But what is better than free? Completely free. So a free trial, you can also convert that into a free forever edition. With some ifs and buts, of course. It's limited in terms of the amount of transactions per month. It does give you the full capability, and you need to log on once every month to make sure that it keeps active. We've already seen this to be a successful, edition, especially also for startups. We have a brewery in Amsterdam who actually started with using webmethods.io free forever and is now growing into a paid subscription. They started as, well, a hobbyist brewery. It's very hot at the moment, all this do-it-yourself breweries, and they started using webmethods.io integration, connecting their cloud web shop with their cloud CRM or ERP package, and well, been a great success today. Well, if you want to get that, sign up for the free trial, fill out the form, click on the button, get free forever, and then agree to it, and it's yours. So very easy. And that's where my talk ends. I hope I'm stick to the time. If there's any questions in the chat or
for the people in the chat, I will try to act as moderator so you can type them. Of course, for the people here, just all them.
Raise your hand.
Repeat them also for the people online that they can. Don't be shy. Well, I will otherwise propose, Jeroen, you give first your presentation for everybody online and on site. If you still have questions for Misja as well, just raise them then in the second Q&A.
Thanks, Misja. I'll try to keep it short, so we end at 6-ish, more or less. My presentation will continue a bit on the snake story of Misja, and I'll explain a little bit on how our methodologies and what our best practices and guidelines are. But first, let me shortly introduce myself. My name is Jeroen. I work as a connectivity lead at Solita, where I'm responsible for everything integration, API management, and IoT related. I'm also active as a solution architect, and I am close to 9 years at Solita today. A little bit more about Solita. Solita has a strong focus on integration and APIs, and we have over 20 years of experience with X number of customers and in various industries. A little bit about our customers. I just wanted to highlight them, and also that we use quite a lot of technologies, and we're not technology, or at least we are technology agnostic, and we look at what is the right solution for the customer requirements. So to start with the story, we'll continue on the API lifecycle that Misja showed before. I used the same setup to at least make the storytelling a little bit easier, but we have also the same 9 fields that we use throughout that journey. To start with, we always create workshops together with potential customers to really identify what does our customer want and what does it need, and what value does the customer expect. If the customer just says, we are looking for an API management platform, that's one side of the story, but what is the business requirement for that? Why do you want to use an API management platform, or what is the value to use APIs in your business? And once we have identified that, we can gather all of those requirements, and we can look what is the best technology for your needs, because every technology has their pros and their cons, and what is now the best technology to apply those requirements into a functionality. The second part of the snake is to identify the resources. And like Misja explained, he had a little bit more focus on the API. For us, it's not only focused on the APIs, but also on the team members. You need the right people to act within the company and also to have them in the governance process. So what is important for us is that we need to have a product owner that really owns the APIs. We need to have the right architects to really make sure the APIs are positioned on the right places within the whole company. Of course, you need developers and testers, but also an evangelist, somebody that really promotes the usage of APIs throughout the company, that motivates the people to use them. A role like a DevSecOps, of course, security nowadays is crucial. We can't just expose all of our data publicly on the internet. We need to secure it. How do we do that? How do we do it in a uniform way? And then for organizational reasons, we potentially also need a Scrum Master or a PM to organize the project itself. Once we have identified those team members, we also propose to use a governance team at our customers. Why do we do that? Is to guarantee quality. Of course, not only quality of the APIs, but also the quality that all the APIs are built in the same way, with the same templates, with the same guidelines. And also to gather feedback from the people that are using it. How can we improve? It's not because we created an API with perhaps a state-of-the-art team that's the best API for your business. And we also need to collect the feedback and make sure that our APIs evolve and grow throughout the process. So that's our take on identifying the resources. And then we come towards the part where we can actually design the APIs. How do we now define those APIs and how can we put them into the practice? Everybody nowadays talks about the API first methodology, and of course we do the same way. A lot of tools that we use they offer in-tool design functionalities. You can use it in the cloud. You have the cloud-based UIs to drag and drop to really create the APIs, define them. But what we often see at our customers is they lack end-to-end visibility. We define our APIs, but which applications are using it? How does it interact with our backend applications? And how do we have an overview of the whole landscape? What we usually do is we use a tool called Enterprise Architect Sparks to define the APIs. And by making that definition once, we can easily expose it in multiple formats. We also have an overview of all the dependencies throughout the whole landscape, and we can see, okay, if we change this API or we make this API evolve, what does it impact? Does it have an impact on a backend system? Does it have an impact on other APIs which we cannot see, and things like that? But what's also important is we can define the test cases and maybe mocking results. And once we do that, we can group everything together. We also propose to make it automated, like with one click of the button, we can generate the contracts, for example, in the Swagger definition or in an open API definition, and then include everything that you need to import it into your platform, like the mocking results, the documentation. So once you have that, you can easily upload it automatically into your platform. The other benefit here is that if, for example, within 5 years, we don't talk about APIs anymore, but there's a next-gen version of the API, we could easily just add that functionality to generate at that moment in time what is then the definition of that specification. And we still have the overview in the landscape, but the technology can evolve. Of course, then we come into the concept of mocking and prototyping. Of course, with the API first methodology, we have defined our contract, which allows us to import it into the gateway and to have our consumers already use it against a mocked result. And so that's very important. And like Misja explained, as of that moment, we can start a parallel track where we can do the actual development of our APIs. Our consumers can use it, and then our development team can really start developing. And then that allows us to already collect feedback. Can the applications use it? Does the contract do whatever it's supposed to do, or do we have mismatches and we need to go back to the design phase, correct them, and start over? After that, of course, we come to the part where we will actually expose them. We don't we not only expose them on the gateway for testing, but we can also expose them on the portal where we have the definition of our API. How do you use it? What type of security is it? You can self-register, you can register your application. But as of that moment, we also need to think about what is the plan that we're going to use. Will we offer our API as a free API with, of course, some limitations like two calls per minute or 2 calls per day? Or is it something that we'll offer for you as a subscription where you pay for this type of data? So this is important whenever we will expose the APIs on the gateway and when people will start using it. Like we already said, in parallel with the mocking, we already can start development, but if we haven't started development yet, now is the time to really start developing. And of course, developing an API really depends on the tool that you use. And of course, I added the print screen here based on the webmethods.io solution that Misja talked about. And you have a lot of these tools have a user interface where you can drag and drop policies or at least create the API based on the definition that you need. What we do or what we propose to do is work with templates that at least you have the same type of monitoring, you have the same type of error handling or alerting, but you also have the same type of development. By using the templates, it makes it easier not only for your developers to understand what's happening, but also to share knowledge throughout the team, and of course for maintenance in the future. What if you need to do changes on an API that somebody else developed and perhaps left the company without any knowledge transfer? So by using that, it all makes a lot more sense and it makes it a lot more easier. Once our APIs are developed, we are ready to put them on our production environment, or at least let's say they were tested properly, and we can make a build to at least promote them towards a higher environment. What we propose here is to have that automated, to really avoid the human interaction. And why do we do that? It's not because we don't trust a human, but human errors are easily made. And of course, there are quite a lot of steps throughout the process, what you can do. And that means that a lot of those points can go wrong. And by automating that, I put a high-level overview of, for example, Azure DevOps cycle to give you an idea. But the general idea is you have your definition, you have your metadata, you bundle everything into the repository. And once everything is in there, you can easily, with some automation tools such as Azure DevOps, Jenkins, promote that to a higher environment and update your metadata at deployment time, and meaning that you need to change your endpoint. Perhaps you have a different security mechanism or a more strict security mechanism that you apply in production compared to test. So at that moment in time, you just apply the configuration which is needed for that environment, and you have it running with the click of a button. And that's the goal that we achieve. Once your build is automated, like Misja explained, you can easily add or adjust some policies and publish them or activate them onto your production gateway. For us, this step of applying the policies and deployment usually goes hand in hand with the previous step. But of course, the policies need to be the one for your production or your target environment. So it's really important that you don't mix environments and you keep that separated. And then, of course, it is live into production. Once in production, it does not stop there. We need to follow up. What does that mean? We need to measure our APIs. Perhaps we thought we developed a state-of-the-art API, but nobody's using it. Or people might use it, but in a wrong way. So we need to gather that feedback. We need to understand what is happening, how do people use it, and what is the general feedback that consumers have when calling this. A lot of the tools, they offer a monitoring feature under the hood based on an ELK stack. And of course, webmethods.io also offers it. A lot of these tools offer it. But the scope, what we see, is usually limited to the call within the platform itself. And customers usually want a end-to-end view, like when does somebody call my API and what is happening on the back end. So what we offer here is an ALK setup, but on a higher level, where we could have, for example, a policy that is an event-driven architect or an EDA event that publishes an event that the ELK stack can capture and bring that into an end-to-end lifecycle or an end-to-end view of what is happening on that API. So these are the things that we do to really visualize that end-to-end flow. And of course, when you have backend applications, they can publish those events as well. You can collect them together and you have a nice overall view of what is going on in your API and what is happening in your environment. Just a small recap. We have our life cycle, and that in combination with our governance team can help you become an API champion throughout your company. And it's not only having the life cycle, it's not only having your governance team with the processes. You really need to have the combination, and you need to really have the people to motivate the usage of the API, to follow the right guidelines, best practices, and also to promote them throughout the company. Voilà. Thank you. So
the same question, both for the people in the room and for the people online. If you have questions for the two speakers, I would say now is the right moment.
Maybe a small one, Jeroen.
Yeah.
You were talking about designing the API. You mentioned you need Sparks.
Yeah.
How far do you go in Sparks? Because you also mentioned you had Swagger file. Was also placing them in Sparks, or is it?
Yeah.
Just an idea?
We have a question from the audience. How far do we go in Enterprise Sparks on the design phase? Do we also store the Swagger file, etc.? So what we tend to do is we have the definition there, not on the Swagger level, but on the higher level. And from there, we generate the Swagger. And that means that we will generate it, but at that moment, we don't store it in Enterprise Architect. We can store it on a SharePoint drive or on the Git repository, but that's just a temporary version because our definition in the design tool can evolve. And that would just mean that it's version +1 at that moment in time.
I didn't know that Sparks supported indeed the generation of those files.
Well, it's not supported out of the box, but we have developed some intelligence in-house that can facilitate that and also to streamline the whole process. And because you don't want to do all those tasks repetitive manually, and because there are certain tasks that you need to do. So we streamline that process, and then with the click of a button, you can generate that definition if you want.
Well, I have maybe to bring up the questions a bit. The second question, because you mentioned monetization, how many paid APIs do you see within Belgium in your customers? Because my experience is that it's quite rare at the moment.
Yeah, in Belgium it's quite rare, and I don't think we have any in Belgium, or at least not in our customer base. I know we have several ones in the Nordics or in our offices in the Nordics, but yeah, it's still limited.
What we do see, I'm not sure if we can hear, what we typically do see is that instead of the monetization, we still see customers making use of the bundles, but then more of, well, a bundle for free, but this is a premium customer, this is a platinum customer, and thereby defining the amount of invocations that type of customer can use. So it's not really into hard money, but more into
it's like a number of calls or how often or how fast will you get your data.
Yep.